more public? Is it a private meeting you wanna follow
It'll
up
be a
with, or
private
do you
meeting,
want it?
private,
in-
private.
Okay, fine. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So I'm noticing the change in line items where we've had police patrol, Alpha Bravo Charlie, and now looks as though it's all been moved into Uniform Services Command. Can you talk us through kind of the restructuring that's happening there? And also to see decreases in the line item relating to training and recruiting is a question for me, knowing that training is essential and recruiting is paramount right now. Same thing with our major crimes, the reduction in that budget. And then final question for now would be related to the work that was done to add to the budget, the social workers that were going forward on mental health calls. I want to know where that falls within this and understand the value that the city is still placing on that.
So I can speak to
Would you
the,
like to join us?
Yeah.
Please.
right there next to the mic, right?
Yeah. Actually, your full face on camera.
Yeah, that's
for
it.
Yeah, I know.
Breaking down what part, yes, so when you speak of the mental health piece, you're speaking, I would assume, our co-response unit, not necessarily our victim services unit.
Correct.
So we just hired a manager and one co-response specialist. We just hired a co-response specialist. Correct. So.
That's a volunteer? Is that what you said?
Well, it's a joint grant
Yeah.
that we have with another agency, so they replaced the person that they had there before, and then we hired our manager.
Okay, so within the reallocation of your budget, that is something that is staying, that program
Correct.
is working well?
Oh, yes, correct.
Okay, okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
My computer just jumped pages. Paper documents don't do that. So another question, Chief, was about, previous budgets had broken down Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, et cetera, and it looks like now those are being combined into, I'm guessing, into this $33 million line item, the Uniform Services Command, am I understanding that?
Yeah, now maybe in the past, did they break down the sectors? Is that why? And now it's all combined as one under patrol?
Instead of having split up, now they combine them so that when you're moving around, you don't have to do as much work to
Yeah.
move people.
Because we're so fluid with our transfers, it just made it easier to make one line item, is what they're saying.
Okay, and then major crimes has $1 million reduction, and training and recruiting has a almost $2 million reduction. Can you talk us through those, please?
Those moved to other sectors, so we've done some restructuring as far as our organizational chart. So the training and recruiting now falls under community development. So there's an area up there that should have had an increase, and that's where those people moved.
Okay. And that's for training and recruiting. What about major crimes?
Major crimes, some of those people moved into the uniform services, so it's just a matter of where those people lie when you get the actual projection. So
Okay.
they're all still there, they're just in other sections.
Okay, so to repeat back to you what I've learned from these questions, number one, we are seeing positive results from having social workers able to respond to calls and we're maintaining that program.
Yes.
Training and recruiting, that money has been put in a different line item in the budget, but still remains because it is still important. Very important. And then the same thing with the change in the major crimes. We are still allocating significant resources to the solving of major crimes and prevention. Okay, all right, those are my questions for now. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Yeah, we have a very, very extremely high for national average clearance rate for solving our major crimes, so we would not at all want to see that drop.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay.
So the functions are still there, alive and well, and functioning well, they've just been moved into different categories.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. When you said volunteer a moment ago, did you mean volunteer behavioral?
Right, they have
Okay,
a.
thank you.
they have
I picked up on, all right, that's what I
Yes,
thought.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, that's okay. I want to
Started
make
that
sure,
sentence and didn't finish it,
I want to make sure I
sorry.
clarified that,
Yes,
because
yes,
I too find extreme value in that program. And Chief, I think we still have just the one, and two more coming on?
We have one specialist that comes
Yes.
from volunteer, and
Yes, ma'am.
there's three in our
That would-
budget
in
that
the
go
budget.
to that program.
So we're adding to that program.
We've added it to our budget, yes,
Okay, that was, thank you, because I think that's a very
yes.
important part of what we're doing moving forward.
Mhm.
Thank you, okay, thank you.
And
Madam
we
Chair.
actually do get, we're looked at by other departments on our program as well for that. So we're flourishing with the resources that we do have there.
Very good.
Great.
I'm glad to hear that, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Thank you, Chief.
So, I thought you was going to add to it. Yeah, our victim services unit is also, held by other cities, and, we were granted those positions, and we weren't necessarily, well, we're applying
Right.
for that grant.
Is it a VOCA grant?
Right, the voter
Correct.
grant, previously, we've had it for over 5 years.
Right.
And it funded 3 positions, but the funding has significantly reduced. So it's now only able to cover one person. So in order to continue that program, we're funding 2 positions in our general fund budget. That one, for that funding, they're gonna be able to give us that and a little bit more. We're still getting that grant.
Okay, say that again. I'm pretty familiar with VOCA. So you had VOCA-funded positions,
Right,
and that money was cut,
right,
and so you had to take on the position.
exactly.
And then you lost me when you said, but we're still getting the money.
Well, we're still getting the money to fund the one for this year.
It was reduced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So what we're
From
getting.
3 to 1,
Right,
okay.
3 to 1. Exactly.
Okay. And are you looking to have to fund it completely next year?
Maybe so.
Right.
Well,
They're not
VOCA
sure.
grants can do that.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're not sure.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? That was easy.
Well, good.
You might want to leave on
Yes. Congratulations to anybody else who's
Fire department.
They're in the middle of their promotional process this week, and so Chief Hyman is on his way here, should be here in just a second, but just happened to come from that
That's
promotional
okay.
process.
That's,
So,
yeah, no problem.
yeah.
We'll do our
If you guys
best.
wanna go ahead and start with the overview, he'll be here for questions in just a minute.
Yeah.
Alright. Fire department is on page B 127. And I think you're gonna have the same question about why we have all the numbers in fire stations in 23 and they're just moving to an operations division in 24. Yes, similar structure, right.
So what I'm hearing from both of you guys is there's a lot of structural changes, but the functions are still going and going on well.
Right.
But the structure, what this budget is reflecting is
Structural changes,
not changes in substance of the work.
right.
Okay.
And that is predominantly, I think what one of the things Simone said is that as you move people, it decreases the paperwork and provides efficiency. Right, fire department has an increase, of $2.6 million. That's about a 4% increase. The big news is that we are going on and funding 9 new firefighter positions for half a year for this. That's so that we can get to the 18 that are needed for next year without putting too much stress on next year's budget.
And at a high level, that's because we need one additional fire station. And in order to maintain our ISO rating and keep insurance, residential insurance rates where they are across the city. And so we're gonna step into that in a financially careful way to spread that out. And so these 9 positions will not start until January, and so that way we're kind of stepping our way into this slowly, but we did not think it'd be wise to wait until the last possible second to hire 18 firefighters. It's something where you have to, step your way into it. So this is a part of a multi-year plan that we are beginning now.
You're gonna do half of it, half of the funding is gonna be this year, or this budget year, and then the rest of it's
The following.
you're gonna spread it.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Where's the new fire station going to be?
It'll be out towards Lookout Valley and Black Creek.
Councilman,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just clarification that you said for 6 months, so the 974,000 is for 9 positions for 6 months?
That's correct.
Salaries and benefits.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilman Ledford.
We're still at ISO 1, right?
That's correct.
We would like to keep that.
One is the
We would like you to keep
yes,
that.
one is the best
Yeah.
possible rating, and we want to keep that there. That gives us the best possible insurance rates.
Be cheaper to de-annex.
So as our community's growing, you're having to be able to parse out service differently and,
I know.
That's correct.
yeah,
Be cheaper.
okay.
Within this, the fire department is getting the planned steps within their step plan, and the proposed civilian increases with the new step plan. If you look on your details, you're gonna see where they've split out some overtime so that they can track special assignments differently. So those are kind of some, if you look details, those are 2 big pieces that look a little funny, 1 minus, 1 positive. There are benefit increases that have accompanied the salary increases. There are some increases in OJI claims. They have increased fuel and maintenance for their fleet, but that's pretty much offset by the one-time reduction in the lease rate. And same thing, they have the break between the sworn and the civilian piece of OPEB, so you've got some big numbers in and out. That's pretty much fire.
Any questions, additional questions or concerns? Thank
Tell the
you.
chief to turn around.
Yeah, tell the chief he can turn around. We'd love to see him, but we're moving on. Hey Vicki, how far are you ready, we've got time.
We can go as far as you want to until other funds.
To the end.
Yeah,
Move those chains.
Go to the end.
okay, good. Then let's go on to Public Works.
Okay.
That should have discussion.
Okay, and
What?
I've got a good person to help with that. Okay, Public Works is on page 135.
They have a really pretty pie. It's so balanced.
All right, Public Works shows a $4.1 billion increase. There are good reasons for that, though. If you look at the salary and benefits line, we have some reorganization going on here. Codes enforcement is moving from community development, that's 21 positions with cost of $1.5 million plus the operations from
Is
that.
moving to Public
Is
Works.
moving to Public
So-
Works for LDO.
Let me just pause on this real quick. Okay, so, who knows, maybe we'll get to community development today. I'm not sure, as the pace we're moving. But right now, community development has 4 divisions, I believe, and one of them is code enforcement. And we've heard over the last couple of years some confusion from council and others when there's a code-related thing. Does it go to Dallas?
Or Donna.
Does it go to
Yeah.
Donna? Where does it go, right? And, really this is an effort to bring that all under one roof. I think it used to be like this years ago, but bringing all of code enforcement together with LDO and our building inspectors, all things code related under one roof, under Dallas, in the land development office. So whether land development office is the right name for it in the long term, I don't know, but it's at least all in one place. So that's the idea here. So that shows, you know, $1.5 million, but it's really just shifting the 21 individuals from community development over to public works because that's where the land development office is located.
Makes perfect sense.
Plus another 1.2 for their operations.
That makes, but it's taking it away from, it's moving it over from,
Right, so when we get to community development, you'll see a minus $1.5 million because it's leaving there.
have you got sufficient, the council over and over again talks about enforcement. Because we make the laws, but then administration or executive enforces. And so has there been a thoughtful look, I'm sure there has been, about this enforcement issue? We've talked about it for years.
Yeah.
Enforcement isn't our job, it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
And how do, and it's a good balance, but part of the balance hasn't been there. So what are your thoughts?
It's probably a bigger conversation. I know last year we added a couple enforcement positions here, hearing the feedback from council. And we actually started a bit more of a focus on the commercial side because that was a little bit lacking. We were mostly focused on the residential side, and there's a lot of commercial opportunity in the space. Look, I mean, frankly, we could have 100 code enforcement folks out there, you know, so there, it's always going to be a balance, frankly, in terms of how much we want to do and what is the right balance there. Ultimately, I remember talking with Vice Chair Hill about this at one point. Part of the measure of success here is how many repeat folks do we have, right? How many folks when we have a citation, where is there you know, improvement happening versus how many repeat citations do we have? And so those are the kinds of things we need to be focused on, is actually, you know, improving the situation versus continually behavior. And when we looked at that repeat behavior, it actually was pretty promising. But look, there's a lot of opportunity in this space. I think bringing it under one roof will sharpen the focus there and give us better opportunity to dial in a little bit more, and then we have a better sense of, you know, what we can do more in the space.
Well, a lot of the limitation we've heard from the officers themselves is city court.
Yeah.
And the fact that a $50 fine is just a
Right.
cost
So
of doing
the
business.
the
So it
AHO
goes back to the city court thing.
The AHO may give us a lever there that we haven't had.
All right, which takes me back to my original question earlier this morning. And that is, if you're gonna use an AHO person to take up the slack where the Constitution prevents city court from doing it because of the fee, limit on the fee, then have we thought enough and sufficiently about beefing up that office and with funds that normally were spent ineffectively, and that's not a criticism of the people. There's a law that's in the way. I mean, has anybody given serious thought about that? Every year we talk about it. And I think this is the year when you're doing so many new and good things, that this not just be a blip on the screen. And I really want to talk more about that, because this is the year that we can make a difference for our constituents. And you know, my other colleagues can chip in if you want, but this has really been a challenge.
And the good news is with that AHO, you know, again, a little bit, the impetus was a little bit more around STVR, but that being linked to LDO, well, guess what? Code enforcement now being there within Dallas's shop as well. I think there's a great opportunity to be focused on all things code enforcement with that AHO and doing exactly what you're
Can
saying.
Dallas's
down into that.
people take things to the AHO? I mean, we're gonna have to massage it anyway.
Yeah.
But if that's a possibility, then should we not be thinking of, limited, we forgot to take care of that at budget time. That's, I know I keep throwing that out there, but, yeah, Councilwoman.
I'll second that thought. I mean, I think it would be very wise to look at the budget for our city court and see where could we potentially move some of that money into a line item for the AHO? And then to create some clarity of process for when a code enforcement issue goes to an AHO versus to the court. I don't know what our limitations are there on, can we just start bypassing the court altogether, but I'm sure that every one of us in our district has a handful of serious ongoing problem properties, and in as much as we're glad we move a lot of people back into compliance, it's the ones that continually for years and years disturb the peaceful enjoyment of your home that that cause a lot of problems, and we don't have a solution for it in the city court right now.
Councilman Ledford?
To continue that conversation, a couple of meetings, or a couple of Mondays ago in a community meeting with the homeowners association, I was a bit giddy about the AHO. And to the point where one constituent said, "You're very excited about this." And I said, we are very excited about it because of the constitutional limits that we have. What we've been dealing with, wrestling with, this is a really big step. And I was talking about the litter that we had also put into that, and I said, and I anticipate that more will pile on to the AHO, that it will, that person will become very instrumental in working hand in hand with codes enforcement. And so just to kind of accent what was already, I think moving this under the umbrella, because it's been confusing. And I've known about this change for a while, and it makes a lot of sense. Because when a lot of the calls that we receive or emails, it's because nothing's being done. And $50 is, to quote the infamous Dr. Carol Burrs, just the cost of doing business to a lot of people. And you know what? It's absolutely true. And we need that enforcement tool. So I thank you. I just want to share that.
Yeah, and I think what I'm gonna do is put that AHO concept up here for further discussion. To follow up on what Councilwoman Hill said, and you said two really good things. You said, you know, what is gonna be the breadth of this, and then what's the process, and how do you decide what goes where? I mean, I think that's like a discussion time. So I'm adding that for further discussion, but kind of keep that in mind, because I'd even like Dallas here. I've heard Dallas say that it's really frustrating when his guys do a really good job and then nothing happens. And so, yeah, I'm adding that to library and agencies, okay? All right,
Sounds good.
okay.
All right, and in addition to transferring 21 in, there are the 7 that moved out. We saw GIS move to technology, so there's an in and an out here. So, and in addition to that, overall, there's a net 3 positions within. And that includes adding garbage truck drivers and inspectors for STVR. So there's a lot of movement of people in and out, but definitely a good direction for Public Works.
Any other questions or concerns?
I'll just mention there are some eliminations here as well, vacancies and filled within Public Works. And we don't have to go through the full list, but it is a net. Net 3 up, but there's up and down, so.
Parks and outdoors.
Oh, we're moving, okay. Very good. All right, for those following along, that is page 145. Parks and Outdoors has an increase of $1.9 million. That's about a 12% increase. And they have a few moving parts. There's a net decrease of 5 positions in parks. When you look at their,
Did they go someplace else, or is that a real decrease? Okay,
Real decrease.
okay. Okay.
right. Even though this shows temp staffing moved, there's also a line for employment agencies, so that really wasn't a huge increase, decrease. It's big between salaries and operations, but overall isn't huge at all. They're, if you look at their salaries are up considerably. There was, there have been, from the pay plan last year, there have been some appeals. And then what we were talking about vacancies and how those have been filled. There have also been quite a few times when we've had to hire above our minimum, which is why we really need a good plan. So they've had an impact on their salaries, which you'll see in the detailed lines. It's fairly large, and it's because of those two pieces. This is a great thing. There's a decrease in their custodial services. And this was highlighted in the couch cushions last week, where they figured that you adding 3 crew workers was a savings over outsourcing it. So there's a big reduction in that line. One thing we need to highlight is utilities. If you do the combination of the utilities, there is about a $526,000 increase. Somehow less in the 23 budget, as we were moving out different departments, we lost tracking for a few utilities. So we're adding that and getting them where they need to be. Just full transparency on that one.
How many people were sitting around going, what?
Yeah. So it's like, we figured out who needs to be responsible for them, and we're giving them the budget, so. But it is a large item increase. Also, a large item that you'll see is under contracted operations. It's up $150,000, that's TPL. 100 of that came from community development, and then there was a $50,000 increase to it. One of the other ones that I questioned was event planning. That kind of, what?
What plan?
Event planning.
They're
Yes.
throwing lots of parties, right?
Yes, we are.
On taxpayer dollars.
No, it's supporting
I'm sure
things.
I'm getting quoted right now. You are? Okay.
It's supporting citywide celebrations like New Year's, Mandela Day, Earth Day, Pops on the River, and those kinds of things. Juneteenth, yes.
Yeah.
Then there's also a line item for capital assets that has a $100,000 increase. And that's to start working on some of our deferred maintenance for aging river walk lighting, new pavers, replacement of plants, irrigation repairs, things that we need to really start working on. And there's an increase to the downtown river park, and the county will reimburse half of that. That's pretty much the biggies in parks.
Scott, do you have everything you need to implement your plan, a city within a park?
This budget does not begin to move into that sphere. This is
It is the toehold that you're needing to move that way, turning the ship around, I think.
if it's a very, very small toe, it is a very, very small toe. It is a even to slightly reduced budget in terms of the impact of inflation and how far our dollars are gonna go. We're gonna depend upon our existing staff to help us with catch-up and just programming and maintenance. But I don't want to sugarcoat that this is going to turn around and get us after deferred maintenance in a meaningful way yet. In June, when we bring you the Parks and Outdoors plan for your consideration, you'll get an idea, and we'll bring some options forward at that point in time.
I know when you gave us our last plan, it's a lot of millions of dollars, and I get that. But at some time, you have to stop the ship where it is and start turning it around.
Exactly.
And that's where I'm at. Does this give you at least the basis to start turning
Yeah,
around?
this is a,
That's all I want to know.
yes, there's nothing new in terms of capital construction here that's not budgeted for maintenance, so that would be a stop.
Okay. Questions, concerns? Councilman,
Do you want to join us at the table? I don't know how many more questions we've got, but I feel odd looking
yeah,
over.
join us here at
talking-
the table.
talking at
Because it
you
sounds
like
like
this.
he's loaded.
I do have a couple of questions. One, so I know we've put turf at 15. I believe we're putting turf on one of the fields at Warner Park.
We have 3 turf fields going in. We've got Frost has them and 2 of our softball fields at Warner are getting them now.
Okay, and we have 2 more fields.
We have 3 more fields there at Warner that'll be natural.
And what will, is there plans in this budget for any turf fields?
There's not, we added that to the Parks and Outdoors plan as part of the larger systemic improvement process.
How many, does it just cover those 3 fields?
Yes, sir.
And no other fields across? So at some point, if we're gonna, I think, recapture those events, those tournaments, you know, we either gotta start looking at Warner Park, we gotta start looking at Summit. Somewhere we've got to start building in some turf fields. All these big tournaments are gonna go where they don't have rainouts.
Yeah.
They're gonna quit looking at us if we don't have the facilities to do it. And it's gonna start costing us money, down the road. So, I mean, I would like to see some kind of effort moving towards that. And I guess doing 2 fields at Warner is better than none, but we're getting behind the 8 ball on that.
If I could interrupt with one thing, I don't want council member to go too far. The Parks and Outdoors plan also does speak to turf fields at the DuPont complex as being a regional complex as well. So we want to take a holistic view at the system and where our growth sports and growth activities are occurring as well. We're going to try to skate to where the puck is going to be and get our facilities there in advance.
Well, and that's fine as long as it can host the tournaments. I mean, it happens to be in the wrong district.
Happens to be exactly where I wanted it.
But, and, you know, and we are creating some TIF districts that I would assume that we could maybe capture some TIF dollars to help with those
That happens to be one of them.
facilities.
We can always work to be creative on TIF dollars.
And we need to be. Maybe we need to create some other TIF districts, I don't know, to help address sports. The other thing, is the Warner Park Zoo, and I know it's not a big reduction, but I wanna tell you, I'm hesitant to take any money away from them. They have done such a fabulous job with the monies that we give them.
Who is that?
The zoo.
Oh, okay.
Why are we reducing them by $6,500? And, I mean, it looks like we could find that money somewhere to at least, I mean, if we're gonna keep the library flat, we ought to at least keep the zoo flat.
It ain't flat.
Where are you? What slide are you on?
Page 145,
145.
line item 3101. I caught my eye too.
Take it from the library.
I'm not sure what that decrease is.
We'll have to look at that.
$6,572.
All right, I'm writing down the zoo.
Maybe
We'll come back to it.
reduced their request.
That would be a surprise if they did.
Pretty sure that's not true.
I mean, they're adding on, I don't think that comes with a reduction.
Chip,
Giraffes
I've
are
got
pretty
down
big.
zoo to come back
They're
to.
money makers.
Anything about the turf?
Huh? Turf.
Anything, you want us to come back and revisit the ball fields?
Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like turf is in this budget, but it
Do
sounds
you
like.
think it should be, do you want, I just wanna know if there's further discussion you want.
You know, and I don't know if it's possible to stick it in the capital budget. What, are we talking another $2 million, or, well, it'd be probably $3 million, right? To do
It's about
those three
$750
fields?
per each baseball field rough. Jason, I'm checking with you. We don't have these numbers committed to memory. I thought it's about $700 for each baseball field. 3 more would get them done.
All right, I'm putting down ball fields and we'll come back to it.
You know, I just think it would be awesome if we could turf Warner Park, and that is such a, I mean, it's kind of a jewel of the city anyway, and it's a prime location for tournaments. You got all those fields right there together.
So when we write these topics down, that's kind of a hint to you that we wanna come back and talk to them, and you wanna do some thinking before that last
But
conversation.
let me ask you this, and I mean, you know, thinking outside the box and figuring out ways to fund that, have we thought about some of our big tourism companies, maybe partnering with them to capture some, even advertising dollars in the outfield, you know? as far as I know, you can put any logo you want to on the turf field, right?
Okay, I've got it down and we'll come back to it. And certainly you'll come back with ideas, won't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
I
okay,
have a
good.
question about that.
Yes.
So the Warner Park fields, how much playtime do local teams get on those fields? How many local tournaments happen there?
Now, when you say local tournaments, you,
We got
so
a
there's a
lot of
di-
league games out there, and a lot of RBI games, so
Yeah.
generally speaking, council member, the weekdays are for locals and weekends are inbound business. You're
Okay.
balancing the two.
They're
Okay.
filled.
They
you know,
fill-
the Miracle League is out there, they
Yep.
play on Saturday, and man, they have they just have, they do a
They tear it
bang up
up.
job.
Just as I think about
Yeah,
investing in parks for Chattanoogans, that's important that we have Chattanooga ball players on our very best fields. Same for Summit at softball, or softball Summit.
Councilman Whitford.
Thank you. Scott, can you talk a little bit more about the 26.85% in the Champions Club in Vice Chair Hill's district? What's going on there?
Sure, I may actually flip that one to Jason unless you want me to take the big swing.
So the, what's the,
No pun intended.
None taken.
yeah, so the question is what the,
Yeah, there's a pretty big budget increase for there, and I'll piggyback that with the same question from Vice Chair Hill, and that is, how are we tracking the participation out there? I mean, that's 26, if I have correct, tennis courts, and I know that UTC is a major player in that relationship. I'm just kind of getting a
Yeah, and I'll
little
set
more
up-
background on that.
Sure, and I'll set up Jason before we start. Just a reminder to the council, we eliminated fees this year for the use
That's
of
correct,
Champions. So
yes.
now it is free and open. The word club probably doesn't be fitted anymore. And we need to do some rebranding.
Okay.
To make sure everyone knows that they have access to it.
Because it sounds like a private.
It feels
club.
private, it
Feels like a
gives that
private club.
vibe, but it's public, and we've got to do a better job there. The second thing is, it hosts a lot of inbound business. We hosted the Southern Conference Championships 2 weeks ago in Division II, or Division III, I get the division screwed up, Tennessee Wesleyan won. Yeah, they did, and then weekdays, again, just like Warner, those are mostly locals. Now, here's the trick. Trick is with the word club, it has felt very exclusive and it's felt like there's a barrier to entry. We are beginning to chip away at that, and we're doing that programmatically. I don't know if y'all saw yet. We have our first activity guide out in over 10 years, was published yesterday, and has champions and has our facilities finally being promoted and pushed out. I ask y'all to give us a little bit of runway here to let that get spooled back up and reintroduce it to the community as we go. And I believe the 26.5 is probably making up for revenue we lost there, but I'll let Jason
because
speak
that
to
revenue
it.
doesn't come to us, so it goes somewhere else. So it's more, that's part of the utilities that were missed, there were some of them there. Yeah, yeah, well, that was it, that was one of the locations. We actually pulled a position away from there, one of the position cuts was coming from there, so a lot of that had to do with just pieces that
One
we
of
were
the
already.
29 reported in this budget came from
There was a vacant
this
position.
club.
It was a vacant position that we eliminated early on during our conversation, so it wasn't this recent move, no. This was early on, when we're looking at efficiencies, when we went, we're going to open it up to public. We realized we're not need people there open the gates all the time, so we pulled that position from there. So most of the money that is more than that we're trying to offset, but it's mainly just things where we're overspent and we're trying to make our budget correct this year. That's where most of it is, not really any other improvements going on there.
Last question, Madam Chair, if I may, is, we have done an inventory of tennis courts,
Mhm.
correct? And I think I heard a number somewhere around 70.
78.
78, I was gonna say 75. And are we looking at converting any of those? I know we're looking in Lookout Valley. Batter's Place, yay, is on deck. And I've been driving by daily. People are super excited. They're emailing me. So this is building a tremendous amount of momentum, and I hope they're watching. That would be great, yes. Have we inventoried those to see what the usage is? I mean, we have a lot of tennis. Are we utilizing all of them, and what can be converted? I mean, that's a relatively reasonable cost to
Look at Valley is
convert.
striped for pickleball.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
make sure.
and that's what I'm talking about, is the multipurpose. I mean, I learned on a multi-course, court.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with this Parks and Outdoors Plan talk in June.
I think we are, right?
I'm really excited. I can dork out on that the rest of the afternoon.
Okay.
It's really cool. For the first time, we have inventoried the condition of all of those 78 courts. And now we've tasked our recreation professionals to say, how should they be programmed? Inbound destination tennis, local tennis for local drop-in use, and then are there tennis courts that should be repurposed based on low use? And they're working on that report back to us now to look at how do we move activity throughout the community.
So this is ahead in June, and we're just pushing
Yeah, and we
forward.
may not have that, I may ask for a little grace on that. We may not have that level of precision down to what neighborhood courts do we flip over, but we'll bring you a far more thorough plan and understanding than a build it and hope they will come kind of axiom.
Well, I appreciate y'all looking at it, number one, and paying attention to what's going on around the country and focusing on our parks. I think what you're doing, Scott, and your team, Jason, and everybody else who's, I mean, you're moving us in a direction that I hear in District 4. A lot of people want to go and they want more. I mean, we're lacking in spaces out there. We have one passive park, we have one active park coming online. That's it. People would like to get outdoors and enjoy the benefits. So thank you very much for what you're doing.
Well, people don't live in Chattanooga to sit on a couch. I can tell you that much from what we see.
Yeah.
Now, they'll come to Chattanooga to eat some seafood, apparently, that we learned last week, but that's a whole different thing altogether.
Which is interesting in itself. Okay, so I've taken from that, we want further discussion about the zoo and about the ball fields. Is there anything else? We're good? Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you, ma'am.
City planning.
I don't. Did anybody make it to the meeting?
Yeah, Eric was in.
Oh, hey, Eric. Okay, yeah, I see you over there. Good.
Hi, Eric, come on up here.
Okay, city planning is 2 more tabs down, so skip one. And we're gonna move to page 161. City planning has a decrease this year of $211,000. The major piece of that is the director's position. We're not defunding the director. But it was half funded from general fund and half funded from the RPA fund. And it makes more sense for that director to be fully funded in the joint city-county agency. So,
Oh, okay, yeah.
so that's a big piece of the movement. And the other is, last year, there was a 1-year sole source agreement with the Chattanooga Design Center studio, and that's under contracted services. That's a $125,000 reduction because that was a one-time thing. And that's pretty much the highlights from.
Say what you just said again.
Design studio was a 1-year sole source agreement,
Okay,
funded in general fund.
so we wanna do other things. Is there money in the budget? Suppose we wanna do that again.
There is not money in general fund.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm really just
Yeah, yeah.
asking, okay.
There's some reserve balance or
An RPA.
fund balance in RPA that can be used for, those
For that
kinds
kind
of
of thing.
things. if
Yeah,
needed.
I don't want us hampered, like, I mean, we're growing and we wanna grow right. We hear that over and over again.
Yeah. So we've talked about if there's a need for design studio this year, that
Or
there's
for
a,
anybody.
yeah, that
It's,
there's a mechanism through which we can still do that.
okay,
Yeah, and I'd say the fund balance is funding activities like the citywide and kind of area planning process already. So there's a precedent for using funds for that type of planning activities. And if there was a need for more, we're exploring whether we can do, if we need to, and can do the Chattanooga Design Studio again. But if there are other ideas, we'd love to hear about it.
yeah, and budgets are just a guide of what you wanna do. You're really talking about function and then attaching dollars to it, and what you're doing is great. I just wanna make sure the functions are carried through.
And this is one of those that it's the balance between, you have the general fund portion itself, then you have RPA that's sitting over separately. So they function jointly.
Okay. Any other questions about city planning? Do you all have sufficient funds? We're gonna be doing a lot of planning. Okay, a lot of planning
Yeah.
with the consultants. Are you sufficiently funded to do that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'll say both between these, just the general fund dollars and the RPA funds, the agency position.
Okay. Okay. Was that easy or what?
Happy to do it anytime.
All right. Okay, Vic, we're down to the magic You ready to go?
I
We're
will
down
need
to
a- I will need a
education
little help
session.
from my friends in economic development if you have too many questions on this one, but got the big pieces for you. Economic development is 2 more tabs down.
All right, now, we have on the list equity and community development.
Oh,
Tell me,
equity and community engagement.
And then community development after.
yeah,
Hold on, I was going by an old list then.
we're at education session 3, and the first one is equity and community engagement. And then community development, early learning, and,
Well, on education session 2, we still have economic development.
yeah, and then,
Okay,
will
and then
you be
equity, yeah.
prepared to go?
We're good.
Yep.
Yeah,
We-
good,
we're good.
all right, good.
We can have, everybody here to go ahead and start session 3 also.
Well,
If
we're
we-
gonna
if we
have
have
enough
enough
time.
Yeah.
The chair wants us to finish by 3, and we've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Good. All right, let's do it.
Alrighty, economic development. They have an increase of $3.4 million, but there's also some reorganization within this one.
Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah, I wanna see this.
Yes. So the Office of Homeless and Supportive Housing is moving from community development to the housing group within economic development. That's 17 positions and the operations. So the positions are about $1.3 million, and the operations that come along with that are almost another 1.3. So that, even though economic development is growing, it's absorbing a new piece of business.
And that's moving from where?
Community development.
All right,
Yeah, so that's 2.6 million of this 3.4 million increase. So that's really what's driving most of this.
It is. There are some increases for some contracts for brownfield assessments.
And
for-
sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, before we get off that, just the reason for that, and Richard or Jermaine can speak to this a little bit more, but a big part, within economic development, there's also affordable housing, and the Chief Housing Officer, Nicole, is housed within, no pun intended, within economic development, right? And so homelessness and supportive housing being in there just seems to make sense,
part of
right?
housing.
And so that's why we're just, realigning all of that together, is the logic behind that.
everything housing-y and new homes and stuff is under economic development.
That is correct.
That is, have I got it? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right,
And within that, there are some consultant fees for housing, some consultant fees for brownfield assessments, some help for workforce development, some apprenticeships. There,
Yes, so we did make sure that we had, some things on the programmatic side for workforce development, especially around apprenticeships, to go along with the mayor's One Chattanooga plan of making workforce development a continued priority. We also wanted to make sure that we had, adequate support, in terms of being able to bring on, consultants to do a lot of, economic development work around Enterprise South, a lot of brownfield remediation. There is more and more interest in redeveloping brownfields, and so that is why we have a little bit of an increased cost on the consultant side, just to help us with those.
and overall, there was a net increase of 15 positions. And there were some movement so that affordable housing can have the positions that it needs.
it's a movement thing, not, are there new positions?
There were shifts in positions,
Yeah, that's-
swaps within.
Are there any, is there a net gain of positions?
There's
I
only,
don't see that.
there's two new positions here.
Okay,
And it's really the director of housing, finance or something like that,
Okay.
Jermaine, right?
That
Something.
is correct. There is a director of housing finance
okay,
that will be brought on specifically.
That's good.
Yes,
Yeah.
with the sole purpose of working with the developing community to help them work through the financial challenges of putting
Good.
together affordable housing.
but there's also positions being eliminated as well. So, you know, I think it's actually probably a net reduction of 2
It is.
total for economic development once you account for the transfers in and all of that. But that's the bottom line.
As long as it's more functional. I was just trying to figure
Yeah.
out. Okay,
There's a lot of moving pieces this year, so that's why we
okay.
talk in terms of net.
that's okay.
Yes.
Were there questions or concerns? Council? Okay. Go from economic development,
And we're going backward in your tabs this time.
we're going backwards. Where are we going to?
167. There's a tab for equity.
And equity and community engagement? Okay.
This area has an increase of $351,000. It also has some reorganization. Neighborhood services is moving from community development to go along with the equity and the equity engagement, community engagement. Yes. That's 6 positions that we're moving.
Let me ask you something. Economic development, equity and community engagement and community development, we're kind of shuffling positions around, it looks like, to make them more effective.
Right.
From
Okay,
community
yeah.
development, right?
That's right.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes. So the neighborhood services is now in the equity and community engagement area. And that was 6 positions that were transferred. There's a net increase of 4, so that means there was a decrease of 2 here. One of the items that I just to know what it was, there's a line item that's only $25,000, but it said pass-through awards, and this is for the Neighborhood Partners Program, since neighborhood services is moved, so it just looks funny here by itself as a new program, but it's not. There is a reduction in temp staffing that's exactly equal to the increase in employment agencies. That's between the salaries and benefits area and operations, 1-for-1 swap. And that's pretty much this area.
Any
Those are
questions
the
or
highlights.
concerns? I think we almost need to see with all these positions, all these functions being moved around to better serve the community. Are they in the right place, and therefore, I mean, I wouldn't have any questions, so I'd see if it's working. The funding on Toto seems pretty much the same. It's just moved around. Councilman Ledford?
Madam Chair, as an example of neighborhood services that I have actually seen firsthand is a strong effort to reach out to council members and engage with them in community meetings.
Yeah.
So if this is evident to what the outcome is desired, I think it's working. I can tell from my firsthand, my neighborhood representative following up with me, staying with me. I almost feel like I have a partner with the city. Not quite as impactful and strong as Kimberly.
Yeah.
Thank you again for your help today. But it's nice to have those ties start and feeling like you've got, more tentacles out of there, if you will, binding together with us. And also in those meetings, I found that they were very well received by constituents. That felt like the city had someone there too that cared, and I think so. That's evident where this is going. I've seen it to kind of answer your question if it has impact, and I feel like it has already.
Yeah, I mean, just to speak to this briefly, during COVID, our neighborhood associations really fell apart a little bit across the city. I think it went down to something like 40 to 50 neighborhood associations across the city. And so this past year, Tony and the neighborhood services team set a goal of getting back up to 60. I think they're up to 66 right now. and reset a goal back up to 70, but they were kind of managerless for quite a while. And Perrin Lance is the new manager there, and he's coming from OSH, Office of Homelessness Supportive Housing. He's firing on all cylinders.
Perrin is who was with me.
Yeah, and he also is kind of at the mindset of teaching folks how to fish too, because a lot of our neighborhood associations tend to look to others to come solve their problems, which is okay, but if we can also teach them how to fish, then that would be wonderful in terms of empowering them to also help them solve their own problems. And so I think there's a lot of room for growth there and strengthening the fabrics of our neighborhoods. And so with Tony moving over into this department and equity community engagement, it seems like neighborhood services that's focused on neighborhood associations, this feels like a really good fit that, in partnership where these things kind of fit together and can continue to strengthen those neighborhood associations and build them back to pre-COVID levels and maybe even stronger than that. So that's the idea.
Any other questions or concerns about equity, community engagement? You guys are flying through this stuff. This is great.
All right.
All right, let's go to, what I have is community development.
And that's back about 6 or 7 tabs.
Yeah, and before we get into this one, like you mentioned, Councilwoman Burrs, there has been a lot of movement here, and a lot of it comes back to community development because it was 4 different divisions.
Right.
And ultimately, you can see on this first slide here, we are paring it back to be laser focused on just community centers. Those other divisions we have essentially put into other departments where we feel like those are going to be better aligned. So for example, code enforcement was here. We put that over in LDO so that those things can be together. We just talked about neighborhood services, putting that with equity and community engagement, where that can be better aligned. OSH was actually here around Office of Homelessness Supportive Housing, putting that with Nicole and economic development under affordable housing, right? And so that it's going to look a little wonky here when we look at the numbers, but ultimately it's because a lot of those different divisions are moving out of community development, and what's left is really community centers and OFE. And OFE is Office of Family Empowerment. That's made a lot of progress this past year in terms of starting to get those services into some of the community centers, working with families who need those services and that support. But really that's what, a lot of that movement you've been talking, you're like, hey, it feels like there's a lot of moving pieces here. That's what a lot of it's been around.
So let me ask you something. Is it going to be equity and community engagement, or is
Yes.
it going to be community?
Now, we're not changing any department names.
All right, so we're on community development.
Yes.
And everything else has been moved out, so community development will really be the community centers and what?
OFE.
That's all I want, okay.
Yeah.
The
OFE.
centers.
Office of Family Empowerment,
And OFE.
which also has some grant funding associated with
Yeah.
it, so it's a little
Okay,
squirrely.
let's go see what you've got, Vic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, you're go.
Sorry, it's your meeting. Do you want to recognize?
No, I just,
No.
I was trying to, so what you've done is a lot of shuffling, and it looks like you've done it to really good effect, or intended really good effect. The money is secondary,
Correct.
and it looks like you haven't, it looks pretty flat, it's just that you've moved things around. Okay,
Correct.
thank
I
you.
think you captured the budget.
Okay.
I think Councilman Henderson had a hand up. I didn't know
Oh,
if you
sorry,
wanted
I'm
to
sorry,
recognize-
Councilman, I didn't
yeah.
see you.
So, I guess you could flip back one slide, but, and it's not really a budget question, it's a how does it look question, but
Community development should not be listed as a division. Is that what you're about to tell me?
No.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
The community centers, so here's an interesting thing. The community centers, under community development, is literally just the building, correct? Like, if a community center has a park, the park is in Parks and Outdoors, and the building's under community centers, correct?
I don't know.
That's a
This
good
is a very meta question.
Well, that's, I'm curious or interested in how those two work, because many of the community centers are used to being over their park as well.
Yes. And we have challenges in that space.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
How are we gonna address those challenges?
We gotta figure that out.
Can you get back with me when you do?
We're gonna need more time, but yes. We can have ongoing conversation there, and I hate that Tony and Don, we're just moving so fast, we can't get people in here fast enough, but,
Yeah, they should be here in less than 10 minutes. They're coming from the midtown.
that's fine, but Tony, Don, Mayor, and I, all four of us talked about that yesterday, and Scott and I talked about it yesterday as well. We know it's an issue, and it's not one that's easy for us to figure out, and it's one that we are focused on, so I'll just say that
So
for
we're
now.
doing community centers vis-a-vis the activities, the outdoor activities, the sports, the park stuff. And what I'm thinking is, when you're talking about the community centers, you're talking about, as I see you going, the services that are coming out, the family services, the healthcare, the computers, the whatever, they become true community centers for all the needs of the community. We have a long history, as Councilman Henderson says, of the community centers, also the sports aspect, the parks, all this other thing. And it should be pretty easy to marry this stuff.
It should be.
I'm trying to figure out why would it be complicated? Why would one have to lose to the other?
It's a great question.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what are we talking here?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, ultimately, these were together, and then departments were pulled apart, and so it's really coming down to roles and responsibilities and figuring that out. So,
Okay.
and then the reality of having, up to 20 different locations and everyone just being on the same page. Hundreds of people all.
Should everyone be on the same page, because every community center is probably unique, if it's a true community center.
There is some differences for sure in terms of what's available and so on and so forth, but roles and responsibilities need to get in sync across, and right now they're not.
All right, so what I have written down is community centers, roles and responsibilities.
Well, I don't know.
I don't think this is a budget topic
That's
necessarily.
not a budget
but
question.
Then
That
you
was,
don't want any more discussion on that.
well, that's just a discussion.
That's
we
a
need-
us conversation.
That we need,
Yes.
I want to know how we're gonna resolve. This is not a budget. It doesn't affect the budget.
Not to.
And I have the same concerns too.
Well, I think, then, let's put it this way, I think all of us have the same questions and concerns. Do you wanna set that up for another time? I mean,
Well-
most of this has nothing to do with budget, really, it's moving stuff around.
I think
It's
strategic
more
planning-
philosophies.
Yeah, I think it could be a strategic planning session update, or it can be, we can.
I mean, besides being Councilman Hester, I don't know if anybody else is concerned about it. I don't wanna make,
I'm concerned about the quality of output
Yeah,
that we
me
get from
too.
the budget dollars for the community centers overall. I mean,
Mhm.
the library is able to show us where they've got circulation numbers that are steadily rising. They're able to
Yeah.
track things, and
Yeah.
we've got a long way to go for our community
Which-
centers to really function as community centers.
Which that topic, I feel, we have a council has a committee. Councilwoman Coonrod's not here, but she leads that committee, and there should be, whatever reporting y'all want along that line, that's where that should be, right? When we get into the nitty gritty of roles and responsibilities, how well people are playing in the sandbox, I think I don't know if all of council is that interested in that topic. Maybe they are, but anyway, so it can be in committee, it can be a smaller group, it can be in strategic, whatever the council
I can tell you
wants.
from the 2 community centers in my district, that is a big problem, what you just talked about. Equity is a big problem, of equity of services, equity of all kinds of things. We just had that discussion. So whether you want to do it here as a roundtable discussion, or whether you want to put it off to a strategic planning, I can tell you, I can absolutely echo what Councilman Henderson is saying. And I do have ball fields attached to one of my centers. So, what's your pleasure, guys? Do you want to?
Strategic plan.
Strategic planning, all right. Great. I will tell the councilwoman that. All right. Early learning,
I don't think we actually went through the numbers on community development. That's up to you, we just wanna keep
you
going.
can go ahead and go through them, but you know what the concerns are.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
go ahead and go through the numbers.
Well, the one thing that I think we need to point out in the salaries and benefits is they're adding some temporary positions, and that's for Kids Camp. The Kids Camp is being ramped up this year, which is a really positive thing for the community. And the rest of it is, is pretty much moving the positions to other departments.
Did I also see kids camp in the Parks and Rec budget?
Not kids camp in the same sense that you're thinking, Rush, here on. They do have some summer camp activities, but it's not the same.
But everybody spells kids with a Z and camp with a K?
If it was spelled that way under parks, I'll go back and double check and follow up with you, but they don't have the same kind of kids camp activities as community centers.
I can search kids. Looks like,
Yeah.
There aren't that many kids with a Z. You can-
All right.
Any other concerns?
All right,
Early learning?
we're losing council members, but.
We are. Trouble like lies.
Well, we don't have a whole lot more torture, so.
Keep going, we're gonna, actually, let's get through. We'll get through
Okay,
capital budget
early
while we're at it.
learning.
All right, let me tell
We
you
need some
what
time to
we're
prep for
gonna
that.
do. We're gonna finish all of this. And then next week, we'll do other funds, capital budget, additional topics. And of course, I'm gonna be talking to council, I guess, at the beginning of next week, how they wanna massage the schedule for public meeting, first and second readings, this sort of thing. Okay, let's go with early learning.
There is no reorganization in early learning. How
well,
about
well,
that?
well.
That we're on page 155. Early learning has an increase of $230,000. There's a net increase of one position, and the focus is on the Community Forward program. Community Forward School program. They are adding a little bit in salaries and benefits. There is a reduction in benefits for health insurance elections, which we've seen a couple of times. Some additional advertising for taking over the Chattanooga Basics program. Some additional supplies and additional money for space costs with their move to Midtown campus. That's early learning in a nutshell.
Did you have?
Can I add something?
Yes.
I also want to just highlight that this does include the addition of one more community forward schools coordinator.
Yes.
Which Kritza and the team is really excited about.
Yes.
So we will add one more school to our community forward schools portfolio.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
Right,
so
so it'll be-
it shows a net decrease of one position, but that's because there were 2 crew workers that were vacant that we eliminated those positions. But to Brooke's point, we're adding one community forward school coordinator. So that's a good point.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Wow.
Okay, so we're gonna end with innovation, delivery, and performance.
Correct. That's on page 181.
only the most steadfast council members here.
Thank you all.
You said it.
The ones that really care about the
The ones that really care about budget.
Should we take roll?
Yeah. Actually, we're probably on camera and everybody smile. Okay.
A flat budget and a budget with reductions, there's just not quite as much to discuss.
Yes, definitely. So this one has a decrease of $94,000. They are adding new positions for the 311 call center, but they're fully charged to wastewater. So the positions are here,
Huh.
the dollars are not,
Why?
because of the volume of the calls they take.
Oh, they said wastewater has to answer its own, pay for its own calls.
Well,
huh?
it's an enterprise fund.
Aha,
yes.
Nice,
Sewer bills
Pay for the.
pay for that.
nice.
So the big moving pieces of this one is the increase of the proposed pay plan and the transfer out of IT maintenance cost.
Yeah.
They're gonna be a center for evaluating everything we're doing, right?
That's what they do. Yeah.
That's what they do.
They have everything they need to do that,
Yep. I think so.
I had a meeting with our department yesterday.
and they're good.
The one thing that's not here and called out specifically is, it was mentioned before, but around the cost savings incentive program, they will help us, facilitate that. So if you'd like a little bit of a one slide presentation on that, that could be other topics at the end, perhaps.
All right,
That sounds useful.
what do you wanna list that, cause I'm gonna send out a memo. Which
Just
pro-
cost savings incentive program.
Yeah. That's a great program. Proud of you guys, that's wonderful.
I think when we were talking about the hearing officer, we're talking small dollars for that and this incentive program that can make such a huge impact. You know, they're not big budget flashy things, but they're
Well,
really
they
good.
could be. I mean, you're talking about shuffling around all kinds of functions, and this is a biggie.
Yeah.
All right, so what I have down is the cost saving incentive program, the library, agencies, this whole AHO vis-a-vis court, and then I have the zoo and ball fields. And then a deeper discussion as far as the rec centers, the rec center vis-a-vis community center concept.
That's
You
gonna be
would rather-
strategic planning,
You'd
right?
rather do
Yeah.
that in strategic planning, so I'll just pass that on to the chair as a topic. And then what we'll be talking about at the beginning of next week is we will be doing other funds, capital improvement, and under additional topics, that's what I just read. So what I'm gonna do is tomorrow, get this memo out.
Great.
And then will you be ready to talk a little deeper about the ones that seem to have a lot of energy?
We will make it happen.
All right, and council, what we need to be thinking about, and I'll put this in a memo, so, because many of us have gone to do other things, is how we want to massage the schedule for the public hearing. Now, Vicki, talk to me about the first and second reading, and what do you need for the state?
My concern is that we don't pass way too early, which will cause problems with budget.
You just tell me when
So-
you need it passed.
How about we get back with you?
That's fine, because we can, listen, that's great. Then we're not pushed to have a first reading after a public hearing. And it'll give my colleagues time to go out and talk to constituents if they need to or whatever. Why don't you call those shots?
Okay.
We need first and second hearing. I just need those dates, and then we'll work accordingly.
I will get that before the end of the day.
Okay.
And I did share the original where the revenue and you said it right. We've got a lot of moving pieces, and the account numbers that show some of those moving pieces, I did send that to you.
That, what you did, will you please send us that list you read from, the bullet
That's what
points? Yeah, if you'll send that to us, that'll be great.
And I think
Thank you
summed it up.
guys very much. At this point, we're going to adjourn and take time out till 3:30 in our agenda session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chrissy said the zoo
Yeah.
decrease was
It
fleet
needs to
lease.
go off.
Fleet lease.
Fleet